idea.
Hey everyone, another podcast episode. Woo! Long time no see. Last time was like a couple of weeks ago, right? We're cursed at the moment, so we always have to reschedule the recordings. But here we are, the regular hosts, and we have a guest here as well. Let's I guess we can introduce ourselves since it's been a while. I'm Kevin. I run a site called Svelte School, and I'm involved in the Svelte Society, and I run this podcast as well.
Yeah, and we are finally back again after a while. I'm Shawn. I work or Swix on the internet, and I kind of involved in Svelte Society, but also I guess the real news is that I work at Temporal.io, where we are actively building out an app in SvelteKit. So I think it's pretty interesting that all three of us now work on production Svelte apps.
Definitely.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Anthony. So I'm trying this remote working lark where you work from a computer that isn't your normal computer, and it's really not going very well at all. So I guess that's my news. But at the same time, I'm still a CTO of Bianc, and I'm still a Svelte core maintainer, although I have to say that the amount of priorities right now means that I haven't done much maintenance recently. But yes, thank you. Hi.
Hi. We can hear you all right. That's fine.
This is good.
And we have a guest with us today.
I see you avoided guessing my name.
I was coming up to that part. So your real first name is Martin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but your online
I pretty much go with
nickname.
Grygrflzr online. So most people probably know me by that on the server as well. I'm most active in the SvelteKit channel and sometimes in the Svelte channel. I'm a core maintainer of SvelteKit and Vite, but I don't really do the Svelte core stuff.
Yeah, I had no idea you were working on Vite as well.
He's our Trojan. We snuck him in. We put him inside. We put him inside the horse and we pushed him in.
Yeah. So that one started because I was trying to get, initially we had some really we had major breaking bugs with SvelteKit that had to be fixed on Vite. So I made 2 PRs on that, and then it snowballed from there. They happened to be looking for maintainers at the time, core maintainers at the time, and one of the existing core maintainers suggested to me, "Hey, why don't you apply to this?"
Oh, that's cool. So
yeah.
What's your background like?
I don't actually I don't have anything to plug, and I'm still in university right now. And so far, I've been doing web stuff for a while now. I've also launched a SvelteKit production app for a client. It's been running all right. I touched Svelte about 1 or 2 years ago. Let me check. Oh, only 1 year ago. And then took a break for 6 months, and then when I came back, it was still fresh in my memory. It was very easy to pick up again.
Yeah. That makes
so
sense.
you're still at university. Are you studying for a master's or a PhD or whatever?
No. It's not a master's. It's just a bachelor's.
Okay.
I'd say that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool. But have you met with other? What was your background in web development before Svelte? How did you come
before
to...
Svelte, in high school I tried React a bit, but I couldn't wrap my brain around it. It's just really complex. And before that, I guess I was already into web dev, but mostly I touched vanilla JS and didn't really use any frameworks, just because every time I wanted to touch frameworks is I was driven away by the huge bundle sizes. Because React comes with a huge runtime. Vue was better, but still came with a huge runtime-ish. Preact was way smaller, but by the time I saw Preact, I already saw Svelte first. So
yeah, and it's more fun to write HTML. That's just my opinion. So what does your nickname mean, or does it even have a meaning?
It's a really old reference to. It's localized as Mega Man in the, I guess, in the US, but in Japan it's called Rockman. So that's I don't know if you've heard of Mega Man and the series, and like one of the games is what was it, Battle Network? Was it 5 or 6? Two of the final bosses are called Grygrflzr, and one's called Grygrflzr, one's called Grygrflzr, and then like they do a fusion at some point.
Oh,
so I just use that, and that's been my username since how many years has it been now? It's like 2008 or something. It's really old, and I haven't really switched usernames since.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how did you get into like SvelteKit? Or rather, like, how did you become a core maintainer?
So I mentioned that I had a production app in SvelteKit. So it started with that. Like, I already had an idea of like what the routing landscape was like in Svelte. So I already knew that I wanted a file system router. So my options at the time were either use Sapper, use Routify, or somehow work with SvelteKit, which at the time had no documentation because it was pre-beta. And so I tried Routify first, but I don't know why I couldn't set it up. I knew the Routify server was very friendly, but for some reason something in my head said, why don't we go try SvelteKit, the beta undocumented thing, and then see if you can reverse engineer that to make it work. So I started with that. Like I made I knew like there wasn't much information to go off at first because like there wasn't a SvelteKit channel. Two is like even when there was like some SvelteKit talk, it was very hush at the time. Like just people passing around information. Hey, you can do this in SvelteKit or whatever. And the only other like thing that close to documentation you could go off was Sapper documentation. So I realized that the production the bundle was, what do you call it? The NPM package for SvelteKit had the JS mappings in it, so you could reverse the code back to roughly its original source, instead of like the minified stuff. So that made it a lot easier to figure out what was going on under the hood. and then I started making like my own patches on top of that, because like one of the big blockers was like SvelteKit didn't work on Windows at the time because like none of the maintainers used Windows, so it's like it was a low priority, and like it's pretty hard to test anyway if you don't have a Windows machine. And then like a couple weeks later, I decided like, well, why don't we document this? Because like I needed to use it anyway for my really bad idea of using pre-alpha software in production. Because I had one more person working with me, so I just kind of threw him to the wolves, and like, hey, here's Svelte, here's the tutorial, here's SvelteKit, and then I didn't tell him it was pre-beta software until like we were about 2 weeks into the project.
I see no problem with that. I think that's completely fine, no problem at all.
So I had to write my own documentation for that, and then I realized, well, this is useful for other people as well, so why not just, it's easier to, instead of like having to retype every time I wanted to tell someone, hey, this thing works like this in SvelteKit, I might as well just have actual pages that I could link to. And then I released the documentation that way.
Yeah. So I was also going to say you started like a secret Discord server, right?
It wasn't secret so much as like I realized like, well, the maintainers don't want to talk about it, so like obviously I'm not going to pressure them to talk about it. Might as well just have some place to talk about it that doesn't bother them. So I just made a server. I put the link on it on the unofficial documentation, and then people started coming in because, like, well, there was no other place to really talk about SvelteKit until the public beta. So
I think that a lot of the maintainers were actually using your documentation because we didn't really have our own documentation anyway. Because documentation was kind of the last thing that got built because you kept changing stuff. So actually, I think your documentation became the source of truth.
Yeah, that also became weird with like, because like some of the stuff I had to guess, like stuff like was it the dollar app? I couldn't really figure out like what does this do? I cross-referenced with Sapper most of the time to figure out, okay, like I mean roots work about the same way, like the page stuff kind of works the same way. Like aside from renaming differences. And then what else? But yeah, like some of the less used stuff, the more niche like base path and like asset paths, I can figure out on my own. So hopefully that that wasn't like a terrible rendition of a documentation, I guess. And
I think it worked pretty well.
Yeah, I should probably take it down at this point because like it's outdated at this point, and I should be pointing to the official docs instead because I can update that instead.
That makes sense. All right. So should we talk a bit about some news, maybe?
Sure. What happened?
yeah. I don't know. So Svelte is the most loved framework in the Stack Overflow thing. I
didn't see that come out. I didn't see, like, I was never asked to vote on that. Like, I don't know how you become part of it.
I think we actually mentioned it on the podcast like a couple of months ago.
We?
Or it might have been some other thing.
Yeah. But that makes me kind of happy because I'm guessing here the fact is that it had fewer responses who actively really liked it versus the number of responses for React who thought it was good or okay. Like the sentiment of the responses was better. Really? Oh. I don't think I dread anything, really.
You don't? I dread React. No, I don't.
Well, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I never use it, so why would I dread it? I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm actually a bit surprised that ASP.NET Core is up there, but then I have no idea about anything regarding ASP.NET.
I think that I guess ASP.NET and the whole stack and the whole ecosystem around it and the tooling and everything, it's kind of like a walled garden. People who write applications in kind of full stack and .NET tend to use Blazor, for example. They don't really have a huge amount to compare with in terms of like what you would see if you were just in that stack and involved in it. And I think that as a stack of stuff, if you are trying to develop stuff with it, it looks pretty good. It works together really well. It's cohesive. It's easy. It's straightforward. It's well documented. So I think there's a lot to be said if you're happy to accept all the caveats of .NET. Like I'm not. I don't like being tied in so much, and I don't like the kind of it's open source technically and it's multi-platform, but it's not really. Like it's still very Windows focused and Windows centric, and VS Code real only runs on Windows, for example. But if that's the world you live in, I think that you have quite a good experience with it.
Right. Yeah. So, like, bringing it back to Svelte. So, Shawn, you mentioned you guys are building something in SvelteKit, right? How's that? Like, does this mirror the responses that you have from your colleagues?
Yeah, no, our team's pretty happy with it. We're hoping to come up with our how it's going so far. Blog posts where we can actually offer some advice or some learnings that we've had. But so far, no regrets. I think people have been pretty happy with the development speed, which is the main consideration. And then I think the ecosystem arguments that people have had so far doesn't really hold water just because we don't use that much. And the ones that we do use, we can either import from existing projects or write ourselves, and that's fine.
Yeah. So what else is new in Svelte this month? There's a lot of new stuff, fixes. So what's the status on that now?
I think also just one more thing. I think that we also spotted that the test runner wasn't running a bunch of the tests as well. So that's now been rectified, I think, or it's in the process of being rectified. But yeah, it's proof, that without solid test coverage, you definitely struggle to keep things working as they should.
Yeah. So how many hidden bugs did you guys find when you ran the tests?
I think Dominic's got a PR open for it. Yeah, I don't know how many we've got to fix.
So with regards to like SvelteKit, how far along are we at the moment? Do you guys know?
But couldn't you, for example, take a SvelteKit project and then just run it using the Node server and not run it serverless? Like that would also work, right? I think conversely as well, though, Sapper was pretty hard to deploy on serverless. So there was there is the Sapper, what do you call it? It's the Vercel Sapper builder, which is just kind of like a module that bundles your Sapper application and allows you to deploy it on Vercel. And that's like a third-party tool that I've contributed to. And having contributed to it, I can tell you it's extremely convoluted in how it builds and what it does. Does lots of very strange stuff about bunging assets in various places that Vercel's happy with. So yeah, I think the more common use case now would be that you deploy your front end serverlessly. So I think that choosing the serverless approach versus the server full approach, given that it's pretty, we provide an adapter to build a server full version anyway, the Node adapter. I think it's probably the right decision to build it as agnostic as possible, but fundamentally serverless first. Yeah, I had the same issue with the Begin adapter. Basically, the Begin provides things like a user architect underneath, and it provides a bunch of stuff that gives you like a whole sort of infrastructure language, and it has Kubernetes stores and it has things like that. And the architect sandbox is how they recommend you develop apps, but it's very, at least I couldn't do it anyway, is to get the architect sandbox to run your SvelteKit app in dev mode and then serve it up in dev mode. It was the same with Vercel actually, because Vercel also have their local dev env, and it didn't work very well with Sapper. It often didn't work at all actually. I haven't tried it with SvelteKit, but I imagine it's quite the same. That you, I guess we need something that's compatible with all these different tools, and that's going to be quite difficult, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very tedious.
So,
yeah.
So I actually have a feature request up, and I think Rich Harris actually commented 2 days ago, which is pretty interesting. So this might get implemented. So I basically asked for adapters to modify the dev mode functionality. It seems like this is pretty common. So I'll speak for Netlify. Netlify Dev. Netlify also injects things for authentication and serverless functionality into its functions that SvelteKit just doesn't emulate. Basically, we're discovering that every platform has its own emulation service. You don't want to debug by deploying. It's a very slow process, and it's something that I've learned very painfully over my time at Netlify. So I think it's possible to offer hooks for these local emulators to hook into SvelteKit, or SvelteKit to hook into the other things. I think we should probably work it out.
I think it's a good idea. I think it's difficult because you've really got to get all the vendors to agree on a familiar API or build those mappings yourself in adapters, which is quite a lot of work. I think also, well, I was just going to say that I think that if you look at these services that are provided and injected and stuff, I think those are the competitive edge of these services. And so they do something weird and wonderful that is very specific to their service. So whether they want that to become a generic thing so that anyone can start up their own serverless platform and just contribute to this API and inject their own stuff is a big question.
I think, thinking about this strategically, like SvelteKit doesn't have a choice. Like it's effectively become a serverless framework, and you're promising to deploy to serverless platforms. For the time being, SvelteKit has to adapt to the reality of each platform.
Yeah, one of my projects, I'm basically like the way I'm making it work is like in my hooks.js, I globally polyfill like the Cloudflare stuff. like so that it exists in my dev environment. So but that brings its own problems because it's not being done at SvelteKit core. Like you can't. It's not early enough that like I can use certain functionality inside the hooks.js itself. I can only guarantee that because hooks.js does run before everything else, but I can only guarantee that for everything else the global polyfills are there, but I can't guarantee it for hooks itself. So there's a limitation to that approach. And of course, you just have this huge, ugly if block in your hooks that's like, if this is dev mode, then do all this unnecessary stuff that's really just to emulate it.
I can't talk for any other platforms because I only really studied one of them, and that one being Begin. But I know that what it does is it pulls in these things from virtual packages that are provided at runtime, but they don't really exist. So you kind of get like at architect / shared, and you just import that, and you import their stuff from it. Like you import the database connection from that, and that is going to be quite difficult to do at runtime because it's literally
It's a virtual import, isn't it?
Sorry.
Is it a virtual import? Like it's
a good question. I don't know. It's something you can import, and if you do it locally, those packages would need to be kind of built and exist already. Maybe that's actually quite feasible, but yeah, it's going to be loads of different approaches like that would give us the stuff you need.
So let's hope this is something that happens.
Yeah, I only checked up on the issue because you guys talked about it. So now that I see there's some progress, I might actually try to implement this thing.
Exciting.
Exciting.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think we're talking so much about serverless. We're not actually doing, as far as I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong. We're not actually doing serverless right. SvelteKit basically deploys to a fat function and runs all the routing out of a single function. Whereas, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So yeah, initially the plan was like, okay, let's just work with this single function for now, like because it's the easiest way to implement it, and like maybe implement root splitting. But then one issue with root splitting is that then your code isn't running. You now no longer have the guarantee that your code is running on the same function. Like because like if you hit two separate roots, you might have two different functions. Like it might be running on two different what do you call it, edge, whatever that's called, like the lambdas. So state might be an issue. And the other thing is like once we implemented fall through roots, it became nigh impossible to kind of split out the roots because now you need to be able, every root needs to be able to like fall through to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. Like you can extract some very specific root patterns. Like maybe if you don't use any, slug roots, then maybe you could optimize it that way. But as soon as you introduce any fall-through roots, like it's a lot more complex to be doing root splitting. And yeah, so like it doesn't. I'm not sure how you would split the functions logically without like putting that overhead on a user. Like, hey, like you need to declare what roots belong to what function, and then it starts becoming way less agnostic. And
I think also,
yeah.
Sorry, can.
Oh yeah, and the other problem, of course, is like then it might not be supported for all serverless platforms because now you're making some assumptions about the platform. Like for example, like how many let's say there are limits on the platform that are per lambda. Like you can only do 50 lambdas. Like if you had like 51 roots, now you can't deploy your SvelteKit application because it's split into 51 lambdas. Like I think Cloudflare Workers, Cloudflare Workers has max of 50. I don't remember.
I think the Cell does too, and that's a weird thing because what happened was, I think when you say truly serverless, so the notion of root splitting being truly serverless, one function per root, quite disciplined. That root splitting level of root splitting came about via Next.js, and I think the reason they did it is because when the Next build was built, the roots were actually too big to run inside a Lambda, given the limitations they wanted, like memory size and megabyte, payload size and stuff. And so that came out of something that was almost like an infrastructure concern. And then now what you've got is that you look at Svelte, and we had a discussion about this in the maintainers chat. And basically, I think we found that the overhead from just sticking everything in one big function for most apps was very much negligible. It barely made any difference at all.
There's also
Right.
like
I think that
whole,
would be the ideal answer, which is that Svelte is so lightweight anyway that we don't run into those issues of scale for a very long time.
and of course you run into the issue of that, like the Lambdas have this whole idea of like cold starts, and like now if you split out your functions, now it's no longer that your entire site is in memory. It's like parts of your site are in memory, the other parts aren't. And as your user navigates around, you hit that cold start over and over and over and over, unless you're really big to never hit the cold start.
Right, that can be a bit of a source of FUD. So you actually want to split it up because of cold starts. It takes longer to cold start something when your function is bigger. That's why you don't want a big function or a fat function.
It's true, but isn't there some metrics in that, right? Because if your Lambda's quite small anyway with all the roots in it, there's always going to be a baseline cold start time.
That time is always going down. Like when the amounts, like we're scared of big cold starts. We're not scared of small cold starts. And if you keep your function small, the cold starts are basically negligible, which is why it's very much the recommended way for things to deploy and begin. One other thing I'll respond to your other concerns raised is that atomic deploys of functions are very much a solved problem. So you can be relatively assured that if one version of a function is deployed that talks to another function, it's also talking to the same version as of deployment. So that is a concern of a lot of people, and they have solved atomic deployment. The other thing about routing, I would actually think about some smart edge solutions. So basically routing at the edge with like Fly.io or Cloudflare workers, and those things will help implement the programmatic fall through thing. But I understand that it's difficult. So anyway, I just wanted to raise it because I feel like people don't really are surprised when it's a big fat function, and then they're like, is this serverless or not? Like you're essentially running a server out of a Lambda.
It's an interesting one because actually I think that one thing I noticed when I started using Vercel first is that I think they do use that edge routing. So they've got a router that's like a single bundle, and they pass off to the functions that bundle addresses. Because their routing, and I think to this day is still true, the routing stuff is on Google Cloud Platform, and the deployment, the actual Lambdas are running on AWS.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, it's very odd.
Huh. All right. What do you guys think? Should we move on to another topic?
Yeah. That was really good. That was really good.
For sure.
I think probably the biggest blocker was just like fall throughs right now. Like, so it's like it's a weird position where it's like maybe not a lot of people are using it right now, but it's affecting like how we can because now you've placed a limitation where like this, obviously it needs to be supported in the final deployment as well, whether you're deploying to serverless or node or, static doesn't really matter, but yeah.
All right. So what's happening in Vite land? Since you're a maintainer, maybe you know, because I have no idea what's going on in Vite land.
So Vite, we basically have like, so the way Svelte maintainer chat works is like we do a call every month. For Vite, it's every 2 weeks, so it's a lot faster. And I guess it's a lot more organized because like we do have like stuff to bring up on the meeting. It's like, okay, here are the PRs for stuff that need to be talked about. Like here's priority 5 PRs, priority 4 PRs, like it's sorted in priority order. And then also talk about big issues, like for example, like the most recent one being SSR handling, which very much affects SvelteKit in that like there's a bunch of dependencies that don't currently work in Vite, or like they require a lot of finagling to make work. For example, D3 has a cyclic dependency problem because like they which like Vite can't handle, but like technically Node itself can handle just fine. And then there's also issues with like the AWS SDK where they're using really weird package layouts that work with Webpack only. Like, so they're doing stuff like, here's a package, I have more sub packages in the package, and they have their own package.json, but the top level package.json doesn't actually tell you any of the contents of the sub packages. So like you have to like you have to basically resolve the package.json files in the way Webpack does it. So the way Vite does it is that it just looks at the top level package.json, but the way Webpack does it is that it looks at the closest Webpack.json, the closest package.json, which means it's a lot slower because it has to go, here's the closest one, go up one, here's the next closest one, go up one directory, here's the next closest one, etc. And there's been some, like, until we get that implemented, there's also been some, we've also been wondering whether that's part of the slowness of Webpack as well. Like that resolution scheme where it's like, well, you have to traverse the whole tree just to support this really edge case setup.
Maybe we can hope that AWS changed their setup.
That's the thing, right? Usually the dependencies that aren't compatible are usually written by big companies. Like it's usually the big companies, because they're big companies, they kind of just do whatever they want. And like something relatively small like Vite, like compared to Webpack, Vite's really small user base. Is like, why should we care that this specific bundler doesn't work with our setup? Like it's like it works on Webpack and we're using Webpack, so it's like it's very hard to convince like it's not even just one author, right? It's the fact that it's like a whole company means that like there's hundreds of thousands or like thousands of people writing it. So there's not really one person you can talk to. You can open an issue, but it's like it's probably not going to go anywhere. Whereas like with smaller dependencies, you can either talk to the author and then like they'll probably have some sort of response, or you can even fork it because it's a small enough library that like it's easy to fork and fix the issue. So it's like,
is AWS SDK, is it open source? Can you actually see the source code?
But like the problem is like it's like the kind of things that you need to change are like infrastructure level enough that like you probably need approval from whoever is higher up on the chain of like developers. So it's not. So it's not like we can just. We can create a PR to like change it, but it's like they're going to be like, why are you changing it? Yeah,
I'm not suggesting that at all. What I'm suggesting is, what if we were to make our own branch, like not say we, but someone who is really invested in this would make their own rebundled version of it from the source code. You could automate that job perhaps, stick your own roll-up files in there, whatever, and fix it that way. I think if I had something that was
honestly
like
at that point, I think it would be much easier to make a lightweight AWS client.
Yeah.
Which, like honestly, like one, it would be maintainable, like much more maintainable because you're not working with this huge monolithic code base. Two, it's like then you can sort of optimize for like specific use cases. Like for example, if you're optimizing for Cloudflare workers, which is a thing. Like you can, like the fact that you can guarantee that certain things exist. Like for example, the Web Crypto API exists and then Fetch exists and whatever, means that like you can make your module specific to that environment and like not have to bring in useless dependencies that just bloat up your bundle, or even worse, make it not work on that. Make it not work on that service. Like for example, Supabase brings in like several layers deep in its dependency. It brings in cross-fetch, which is a problem on Cloudflare workers because you're not running a node. You're running V8. Like it doesn't have any of the node isms. Like it doesn't have the node environment. So like by assuming that it's in a node environment, you've also sort of screwed yourself into position where you can't deploy to this specific. You can't deploy to Cloudflare workers if you use Supabase, unless you do a bunch of dance like sneakily replacing crossfetch out for our Svelte global fetch, which you can do, but it's not something you think to do as an end user.
Yeah.
And
all right.
I guess it started also out as like you did ask like what's going on in Vite is like so right now we're trying to get SSR. So right now SSR is actually marked experimental, but which is a big blocker for a lot of people who are like, we can't use this because it's marked experimental. When can you make it stable? And so the biggest roadblock to making it stable is making most dependencies work out of the box without having the user having to like mess around with configs and whatever, except for of course niche use cases.
That makes sense. All right, so I think we should probably move on to unpopular opinions.
I struggled again this week, amazingly. I'm obviously happy. I'm too happy and content with everything.
Yeah. So I see, Shawn, you have one here.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I figured I would come up with something just because like we haven't had unpopular opinions in a while, and I think these are always good debates. So this is a 2-layer unpopular opinion. Are you ready? The first layer is that people underrate SEO, or companies underrate SEO compared to social media. And I think it's generally true that a lot of people as well, they try to get attention by spreading their content, getting readers via social media means, and building followers or whatever through social media. I think, and something that really convinced me was it's like a 2-factor thing. Like there's a lot of people just searching for content and will never see you through social. So SEO is underrated there, and also it's an evergreen thing. Like once you rank for something, you probably will rank for quite a while, and that will drive a lot more traffic than your social media posts, which are like a one-time event. Issue, or so essentially a one-time event, and actually most of your followers don't even see your posts because just the platforms tend to restrict how much of your followers can actually see it. So I think just in general, it's something I've been really thinking about is like how to basically get attention for something that you think deserves attention, like a Svelte or like a temporal or whatever thing you currently happen to be working on. And I think SEO is probably underrated for the majority of cases. So that's the first layer of opinion. If you're interested in more, basically I have a tweet thread on why that is, which is funny enough because I don't do much SEO myself apart from blogging. But the thing about the second layer on unpopular opinion is that I think the rules flip for developer tools. So social media becomes more important than SEO for developer tools, mainly because we don't find our solutions by searching. We find out about Svelte and Vite basically entirely through word of mouth. It has to do well on Hacker News, which is a form of social media. It has to do well in Stack Overflow developer surveys, which isn't a form of social media, but probably everyone who filled it out was influenced by social media. So ironically, developers are much more influenced by other developers than Google search results, because we just don't Google like, hey, I need a new framework. Like, you don't do that. You just hear about a new framework from a friend.
Yeah. I think that's probably true, but I think also that we search for different things, right? When you're using like a search engine, you're searching for something like how to integrate library X with Svelte or something like that, right? Whereas, yeah, I guess it makes sense. Yeah.
Like lower layer how-tos are definitely driven by SEO, right? Like you're not going to tweet it. No one's really going to care. Like, how to Svelte with Cloudflare. Like, doesn't matter. But yeah, SEO probably drives a lot more traffic.
I was going to disagree with the first point, but then you brought up the second point, and I think it mostly falls into the second point, where like I see a lot of people in Svelte get kind of asking, if I don't care about SEO, I don't need SSR, right? And then so it usually starts like that. Like, can I turn off SSR just so to get this thing working? Because like SSR, because I think SSR is the problem. Like I don't need it. I just want an SPA, and I think in that sense I was gonna say. In developer circles, at least, SEO is almost overrated. Like it's almost like because it's like they think it's the only reason you need SSR almost. Like it's like
Well, no, it's performance too.
yeah, like but there's other things, but like I mean like it becomes the thing that like people think about like when they're saying, okay, like why do I need SSR? Because SEO. It's like it almost becomes the go-to answer to the point that like it's people have flipped it around. Well, I don't need SSO, so I don't need SSR. So why are you forcing SSR on me? Why is this thing SSR first?
Yeah.
I mean, so for me, like the SSR and SEO thing, yeah, I see the same question, and I tell people like it's not about SEO. It's like that's the one very small part of what SSR is and why it exists. But I think it's a weird one because it's also I think we might have mentioned it on the podcast, or maybe I found it in Google or something. But there's a site called Empty States, so emptystats.es, I think it is.
Yep.
And it's just a visual display of all the different empty states from websites. And I haven't been able to figure out whether it's saying that these empty states are cool and they're really nice to look at, or whether it's saying that empty states are bad. Look, users haven't got any content. But there will always be a time when a user of your system will go to a page that hasn't yet loaded its data because you're not using SSR, and they're looking at an empty screen where they want to see the data, and it's delaying their thought process, it's delaying their click, and it's delaying them doing what they need to do because you're showing them a blank screen and loading data in the valuable time where they're sat there in front of it. And I think that alone should be the reason that everyone should be using SSR and no one should be using SPAs, and except for in some very niche situations. Just because looking at a screen that says nothing to see yet, or we're loading your data, no one needs to do that, right? Just serve them up the page.
Yeah, that's a common counter argument I hear also. Like what if it takes too long to SSR, and like what I'd rather show a loading page instead, just to tell the user that hey, this is loading. But like
because you can do that, you can show a loading icon somewhere. But what you can do is continue to show the user on the screen the data they were looking at before they clicked. Right, they're still having stuff that they can take in and use that's useful to them, perhaps.
Right, and I think that's probably why people are asking, like, why doesn't Svelte have a React suspense altered stuff? But like, React suspense is like it's like if you've used Routify, there's sort of something similar, but it's kind of hacky in that like it's like it kind of has like a timeout delay where like if your SSR doesn't finish in time, basically just send an SPA to the user is roughly it's like.
Well,
so
we'll grill them about that on the next podcast.
Yeah,
we'll say, what is this?
We're gonna have them on Thursday, so we'll see if we can.
They probably know
something
better how it works. But like so like there's that. But like I don't think React suspense is the right answer either. So like there was like a thread on this on the Svelte subreddit, like where it's like there was some discussion about like why doesn't Svelte have this, and like would it be useful if Svelte had this? And like you can
people ask the wrong questions. They ask the wrong questions, don't they? I think you've nailed it there exactly. You say they're saying where's Svelte suspense. What the question is what are you trying to do? And let's work back from there and figure out what you need in order to achieve that.
Right, and I think a more sensible solution might be, and I'm not saying this is the only solution. It's like maybe work on partial hydration, and it's like then like you can send here's a skeleton, like not just a skeleton, but like here's all the static stuff on your page. Here's most of the data we've already loaded quickly, and now maybe some part of your page is going to load slowly, and then you can just partially hydrate that part. So that right now SvelteKit doesn't have that, right? You either have your entire page is pre-rendered, or if you have either your entire page is static or your entire page has to be hydrated, which sucks a lot for something like blogs, where like you're using, say, MDSVX to import Markdown, and then like you have to, but you'd have a little bit of interaction on your page. Let's say your navigation bar. If you want your navigation bar to work, you need to enable hydration. But if you enable hydration, you also have this 60 kilobyte hydration code just for the blog post because it's Markdown, like, which is really stupid. It was like, and I have no idea how, like right now with the current tools that we have, like that's not in SvelteKit core. Like how would an end user solve that?
Because you can, or because someone else has it in their framework or library, whatever, doesn't mean that you should. And I think Rich is very good at understanding that, right? Rich, I think, applies that to everything that he looks at.
All right. Yep. We'll see what happens in the future. All right. So any other unpopular opinions? Nope.
Apart from everything I say, yes. No.
All right. Let's move to picks then. I can go first. Mine is a new terminal called Warp. It's a terminal. It's made in Rust, apparently, and it has some pretty nifty features where you can like copy blocks of code and you can share them instantly. And you just like upload them online. You can share like a URL and people can see the error with all of the colors and all that fancy stuff. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
It's very fast. Only available on Mac at the moment, unfortunately.
Oh, come on.
Wait, it's made in Rust, but it's not cross-platform? That's it's surprising to hear.
Yeah,
I guess it uses a lot of the Apple UI kit stuff then, like for the UI, I guess.
I don't think it does. I think it's just like a matter of them wanting to build something. You need an invite to use, like to be able to download it. So
like Clubhouse then.
yeah. And we all know how Clubhouse worked out.
Yeah, right.
Actually great for those that use it.
I mean, initially it did. I've literally just uninstalled it from my phone now. I just can't be bothered.
Yeah, but like the thing about your usage is that you are always going to be a tourist. So you are not Clubhouse's core audience.
It's true. It's true.
They have opened up out of beta, and they have something like 10 million users since mid-May, and 500,000 rooms per day, even today. So
wow.
they're not dead.
Oh no, they're not dead.
They're not dead. You just see a lot of this.
No. They're not dead outside, but they're kind of. So it's not dead inside, but it's really weird where it's like, at least as a user that just got into it, it's like, why are there so many crypto groups?
I mean, that's Telegram.
Like it's a very specific niche of like people in like a huge part of the audience seems to be like people in Silicon Valley doing Silicon Valley stuff like crypto, and it's just like, well, it's a bit hard to get into that, like if you're not already into that kind of topic.
I ended up in like a real estate zone somehow, loads of real estate talks, which I didn't mind actually. They're quite interesting, but like what?
Pretty amazing. Any other picks?
Yeah, I mean, I think Anthony had a pick, or I can go.
I had one. I'm going to skip it because I think mine's quite involved and it's getting long already. So.
All right, I'll do a quick pick. I've been playing Spider-Man Miles Morales. I played the original Spider-Man maybe 2 years ago, and then Miles Morales came out, which is like a sequel based on the exact same map, but they just have more content. And I'm a huge fan of Miles Morales just because he is such an interesting new take on the Spider-Man character. And the A+ sign for me is essentially like basically at the end of the game you get a special suit called the Bodega Cat suit, and in it you wear a backpack with a cat in it, and the cat just goes around with you solving crime. And there's this finisher where like you like take down the bad guy, and then the cat comes out and scratches it to deal the finishing blow, and it's just amazing. That's it.
Is it for PS5? Or?
Yeah, PS4, PS5. You can do both.
Cool. Grygrflzr, do you have a
pick? Well,
you don't have to pick one.
I've been looking at like monitors recently, and it's like there's so many variants. And like you have to be really careful with like, okay, like for example, like yes, there are paper specs that you can look at, but like there's a lot that the paper specs are kind of like inaccurate about. Like for example, not refresh rate. Was it gray to gray? Like the how fast a pixel changes from one gray color to another gray color. That's apparently often like they're basically lying on the spec sheet. Like they'll say 1 ms G to G switch times, but like turns out if in the review it's like it actually is like a lot longer, and so maybe it says like this can run up to 144 hertz, but turns out but actually it can't because the delay between switching pixels is longer than the time it takes between like how fast you need to be for 144 hertz. So there is that. Like I have to worry about as well. Like there's like turns out there's like a bunch of ways you can make monitors. Like there's twisted pneumatic, there's IPS, there's VA, there's OLED, but like OLED isn't really a thing for monitors apparently. Like you can get TVs, but they're gonna be huge. So like
it shouldn't be, because don't OLEDs have problems like about burn-in and stuff?
Yeah, I don't know if they've fixed that recently or not.
Is your picking monitors? Is that a meta thing?
I did end up with a choice, but it was more like out of necessity of like, okay, like let's balance these requirements. It's like rather than like a true pick, I guess. It was more like, okay, I'm looking for something that's like at least 120 hertz. I'm looking for 1440p, and it's like maybe ultra widescreen. I don't know. We'll see. So
your pick is the comparison process of choosing a monitor. I quite like that. That is meta. That's kind of that's like my level of meta for picks.
All right. I think that's it for us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
And we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.